Hey guys, Logan Albright here. I'm sitting here reading this essay collection, Arguably, by Christopher Hitchens. And I've read a lot of essay collections in my day, and they always kind of leave me unsatisfied, even when they're by authors who I very much like and respect. I like Hitchens a lot. He's a great writer, and he has a lot of interesting opinions. But there's something about essay collections that bothers me, and that I don't like to read them as a whole. And I was thinking about why, and so that's what this video is about. The problem with essay collections. So I think there are mainly two real problems with essay collections as books. The first one is that there's no real thread of coherence that runs through an essay collection the way there is through a novel, or even a well put together anthology of short stories. In an anthology of short stories, even if they're by different authors, there's usually some kind of either thread of tone or genre or style or theme that runs through it and gives the whole a sort of cohesion if they're done well. They can be done poorly, as anything can. But if they're done well, there's a thread of cohesion there. Essay collections tend not to have that. They tend to just be random thoughts by the author on a variety of topics. And it can be kind of disjointed. It can be, a little bit like a pinball machine jumping from point to point to point. And there's nothing really tying them together. So as a whole reading experience of a book, they're a little bit unsatisfying in that regard. And I think the second problem with them is that it's just a lazy way of putting a book together. If you're someone who writes a lot of essays, like for a syndicated column or something, you're churning out 1, 2, 5 a week. It's easy to say, oh, I want to put out a book. What do? Collect all of my essays that I've written, slap them together, publish it as a book. But it was never intended to be a book, and so it doesn't really work. Also, when you are writing essays for a living, as most people who write essays nowadays do, you usually have a lot of deadlines. You have, like I said, a couple to put out a week. And as someone who's written a lot of essays for various publications myself, it's easy to run out of ideas and it's easy to run out of inspiration. So a lot of these essays are not the author has something really important to say and he feels inspired to put it down on paper like he would with a novel or maybe a short story. It's meeting a deadline. It's trying to fill the words that you've been obligated to put out there by your publishers. And so I find a lot of essays and essay collections are not that inspired and really didn't need to be written and really didn't need to be said. I have an example of that here. This is an essay collection by Robert Higgs called Delusions of Power. And it's a book about basically libertarian thinking, which I'm a big fan of. And I like this kind of writing generally, and I like these kind of opinions generally. But this is like a classic example of the laziest kind of essay collection. It's just a collection of syndicated columns that he wrote over the course of several years, slapped together between two covers. And he says, there we go, let's call that a book, publish it, people will buy it. If you're going to write a book, you really need to have a concept for it. You need to have a theme that you're trying to get through, and you need to have some kind of coherent thread that runs through it. It's not enough just to slap together a bunch of unrelated thoughts and say, that's my book. The one exception I will give to this rule is the work of G.K. Chesterton, because he's one of my very favorite writers, and he has put out several essay collections over the years that I all think are great. I think his essays they're so witty, they're so clever, there's so much fun, there's such a thread of humor and the joy of life going through all of them that I think they hold up really well. And I enjoy reading his essays, even if the collections themselves, could be a little bit more organized or a little bit more coherent. His essays are so good that I don't really mind. But even a writer who I greatly respect, like Christopher Hitchens, I think these essay collections are a little bit dull just because there's no theme and it's a bunch of random unconnected thoughts slapped together. So that's my thoughts on essay collections. If you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you do agree, then feel free to like and subscribe this video. Check that notification button so you'll get notified of new videos. I have one coming out once a week, every week. And I will see you next time. Have a good evening.